Hello, my name is Joshua Haney and I'm a saxophonist and educator. Today I'm coming at you with a very quick video because I am in an unusual position where I have come into possession of a Selmer Supreme alto saxophone just for a few days to test it out. So I'm going to play some clips for you and then we'll talk about it at the end. I hope you enjoy. Now, as a reminder, my tests will be done against my usual horn, which is a Selmer Series 3 alto saxophone, which I think will compare pretty favorably against the Supreme since they both have quite a lot in common. And also, the mouthpiece and reed I'll be playing are a Selmer S90 190 with a Legèré 3 1/4 strength reed and an Ishimori gold-plated ligature. Let's get started. All right, now that you've heard both horns, let's talk about the sound as well as some other small differences between the Series 3 and the Supreme. So first, I think both of these horns are definitely related. They both have the Selmer sound, which is something that you either love or is just something that you're not about. So if you're not into the Selmer sound, these aren't the horns for you. I found that the Series 3 had perhaps a little bit more projection, especially in the mid-range, from middle G probably up to that high G. Whereas the Supreme had a bit of a warmer sound overall and was more reminiscent of sounds from the Series 2 as well as the Reference 54. What sets the Supreme apart from those older horns is the Supreme maintains the round and diffuse homogeneous tone quality found first on the Series 3 alto saxophone. So I suppose what you could say is the Supreme offers a bit more of a classic or perhaps a more reserved take on the same sort of basic template that the Series 3 has to offer. I would still maintain that the Series 3 is perhaps a bit of a more neutral horn and flexible to many different sounds, whereas the Supreme, while not unneutral, is perhaps coloring your sound a little bit more to be on that darker, sweeter side and a bit more reserved. If I had the luxury to own both horns, I would probably use the Supreme a lot for saxophone quartet, saxophone and piano, and chamber music, whereas the Series 3 would be really great for concerto performances in any instance where I really feel that I need to cut above a large ensemble. Now, as far as jazz is concerned, I will not say that I'm a great jazz player. However, I've never understood the hate against the Series 3 when it comes to jazz. And I'm sure there's a number of players that make it work for them. However, if you are looking for that more classic Mark VI style East Coast New York jazz sound, I think the Supreme would get you a little bit closer to it, because that tone quality on this horn is just a little bit closer to those older horns that those jazz cats tend to prefer. So if you're looking for a modern Selmer, check out the Reference 54 or the Supreme if you are looking exclusively into jazz. And if you're playing both genres, I mean, the Series 3 will do the job too, as well as the Series 2. As far as intonation is concerned, they're rather similar. Now, I know a lot of people have been playtesting this horn and freaking out in a good way about the intonation, but I noticed that all of these players that were making exclamations were either coming from Series 2s or coming from Mark 6s. I think compared to any of those horns, the Supreme is a massive improvement in evenness of scale as well as intonation. However, the Series 3 actually made a lot of these advancements all the way back in the late 90s. However, I think it was so far ahead of its time that a lot of players reacted against it, and unfortunately, it just wasn't as well loved as those other more popular models. So what I mean to say is, a lot of the evenness of scale can be attributed to the advances that already came on the Series 3. However, there are some small improvements that still happen between the Series 3 and the Supreme. I find that the Supreme especially goes a little bit less flat in the left-hand notes, such as low G, A, and middle C. I think it controls the intonation way better there than any other saxophone I've ever played, to the point where I could get a tuner to be within just a couple cents of zero. I also found that the right hand, especially F, E, and D, were less prone to going flat than on my Series 3. And this is actually a pretty normal, common problem area on the Series 3 and Series 2 horns. They tend to go a little bit flat in that right hand, and I'm glad to see that the Supreme resolves a lot of these problems. Now, a lot of people had asked about the differences in C-sharp correction mechanism between the Series 3 and the Supreme, and I do find that the new correction mechanism actually makes a difference. Now, if you look on the Series 3, the correction mechanism is located right here, and if you can tell, it uses a pretty big pad to make that happen, and is pretty close to the B tone hole right here. So what I find is, when you play the horn for a long time, there's a little adjustment screw that helps keep that C-sharp adjustment pad closing when it needs to. Sometimes that goes out of adjustment. It can cause a leak that will absolutely wreck the response of the entire horn. So Series 3 owners know to check that little screw and make sure that your horn is always in perfect adjustment. I think that some of the adjustment problems come from the fact that it's just a big pad to be thrown around with a small screw, combined with the fact that it's always being moved whenever you press the octave key or any of the left-hand notes. Now, by comparison, the Supreme has a much more sensibly designed C-sharp correction mechanism, which we can see moving right there, and it looks actually a lot like a Series 3 soprano. I find that this mechanism is placed a little bit higher on the body tube and has a very slightly smaller tone hole and a much smaller pad with way less dead room. As a result, there's just less pad and weight being thrown around every time you press the octave key or one of these left-hand keys, and I think it's going to stay in adjustment way longer. I also find that it does a better job at pulling up that middle C sharp. Overall, I think that C sharp adjustment mechanism is a really big improvement, and if that's something you really care about, I think the Supreme does a really great job with it. As far as ergonomics are concerned, again, I think there's a lot of similarities with the Series 3, especially pre-Jubilee Series 3. You can see that the Supreme shares left-hand pinky table design. There was that one, and then here's the Series 3 with the same design. However, that design went away with the Jubilee revisions, and on the Series 3 today is actually identical to the Series 2 and reference 54. So it's really nice to see that come back and bring a lot of the levels of adjustment back to the player because it's an adjustable left-hand table. My favorite ergonomic improvement has to be these scalloped TA, TC, and C3 keys. These keys work better whenever you press down the key that comes before, and you can more easily roll onto it due to this little bit of curve that comes on the edge of the key. I think that's a really smart improvement, and I hope to see it on more saxophones in the future. Something that's very different that I didn't expect was the left-hand palm keys. On my Series 3, I love that they are so close together and feel oh so compact, especially the distance between the C2 key as well as C2 to C1 or C2 to C4. I find that I'm able to navigate very fast passages quite effectively because all the keys are in a very centralized range in my hand. The Supreme feels like a combination of old-fashioned spread-apart keys with a little bit of the compactness of the old Series 3. I personally prefer the more compact design, however, I could certainly get used to this, and I think it would be a big improvement for anyone who's coming from a Selmer Series 2 or reference 54. Something I'm less thrilled about, unfortunately, is the change that was made to the auxiliary F-sharp key. For many years, Selmer has used an oval-shaped key for this chromatic F-sharp, as you can see right there. I think this is a great design choice because it gives the player lots of ways to strike the key and not miss, and is more accommodating of different finger sizes. However, on the Supreme, they have reverted to a Mark VI style round touch piece, which while visually looks very nice, I think is a little bit harder to strike reliably compared to the oval. I was really hoping that I wasn't going to have a problem with this, and generally I didn't. However, I did find myself missing maybe 10% more compared to the Series 3's oval touch piece. Now, while this is a very good round touch piece placement as they go, I still think that it is not quite as good as the oval touch piece and wish they would consider changing back. Overall, I think the Selmer Supreme has made a really good first impression. Now, I'm not feeling an itch to run out and spend the money to buy one today. However, if anything were to happen to my Series 3 and I just couldn't find another one that played like it, I would certainly be very tempted by the Supreme as another option. I think the Supreme is an excellent choice for players who want to do both classical or jazz, and also offers a bit more of the classic Selmer sound that people seem to prefer. I personally prefer a bit of the more modern sound with a little bit more projection and brightness offered by the Series 3. However, that classic Mark VI style Selmer sound with a dark core and a bit more sweetness and introversion is certainly very much loved by a lot of people, and I can see the Supreme is going to be a very popular horn. Well, that's the Selmer Supreme. It really is a beautiful horn, and I've been very happy with it. You know, I haven't even talked about the cosmetics because there's a lot of reviews that talk about it. I mean, that engraving is just absolutely amazing. And also, I love some of the modernizations they've done to some of those key guards. But there are other reviews that talk about this a little bit better. I hope that my first impressions provide you some interesting insights and that it is useful for you. This was Joshua Haney, and I'll see you in the next one.